We're back in session. Parties of council are present. All members of our jury and our alternates are present. And people may call your next witness.
I believe Radeleff, please.
Do you solemnly state the evidence you'll give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
State your full name, spell it for the record.
Heatherly Radeleff, Heatherly, Radeleff.
Okay, you may proceed.
What is your occupation, ma'am?
I'm a sheriff's lead crime scene specialist.
And can you tell us what that is?
As a crime scene specialist, I respond to major crime scenes within the county of San Bernardino and process the scene along with homicide detectives.
And how long have you been employed as a crime scene specialist?
I've been a crime scene specialist for 17 years.
How long have you been a lead?
I've been a lead for 7 years.
And what training do you have to hold that position and maintain that position?
I've had hundreds of hours of specialized training in crime scene investigation, which includes scene processing, blood scene pattern interpretation, gunshot trajectory, evidence detection, and enhancement.
Do you have any professional associations that you are currently a member of or certified by?
Yes, I am a senior certified crime scene analyst with the International Association of Identification.
And what are the requirements for maintaining that association?
You have to, certain classes, you have to take a number of classes or teach classes within a 5-year period, and you have to retest every 5 years to maintain your certification.
And I take it you do that?
Yes, I do.
Can you talk to us in general at this point about your process when you're called to a crime scene to process it?
Generally, in a crime scene, I'm generally called to process a homicide investigation. Usually I will respond to the crime scene, make contact with the homicide detective, do a walkthrough, discuss important items of evidence that need to be collected, photograph the crime scene, document evidence collection, and whatever specialty items that need to be done, which would include gunshot trajectory or blood stain pattern interpretation.
And is the way you process a crime scene uniform, or does it vary?
It varies depending on the crime scene.
And why is that?
Not all crime scenes fit in a nice box. Not all bad guys commit crimes the same way. It's just depending on how the crime scene is, what the circumstances are surrounding the crime scene is the method that I have to take in processing the crime scene.
Well, is there anything special about photographing a crime scene?
Well, yes, it can be. If it's nighttime, special measures have to be taken to photograph a scene.
And what about evidence collection? What steps are taken in the process of collecting potential evidence?
Well, depending on the evidence that needs to be collected, if it's biological evidence, or if it's just physical evidence, if it's fibers or hairs or blood or clothing, it's just depending on what the evidence is will determine how it's collected.
What, if any, type of testing do you do in your position as opposed to just collecting evidence or potential evidence?
Fingerprint processing.
Okay, and what does that entail?
Bringing the item back to the lab. Once the item is back to the lab in a secure environment, then the item, also depending on the surface or the item itself, can be fingerprinted and or swabbed for DNA.
But you don't do the actual testing for DNA?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't do the actual testing comparison of latent prints?
No, I do not.
Someone else does that?
Yes.
When it comes to the presence of blood or other bodily fluids, do you engage in any type of testing process or just a collection process?
I have tools available to do presumptive testing at the scene. Once a presumptive test is done and it is collected, then it is sent to a DNA unit for further testing and confirmation.
So back in November of 2013, did you get summoned to a scene off of Stoddard Wells Road, north of the city of Victorville?
Yes, I did.
And for what purpose?
I was assigned to go assist the homicide team in the excavation of some graves.
Did you respond to that area?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe, I'm sorry, which day did you first initially go out there?
I went out there on November 12th.
When did you receive notification?
I received notification the day prior to the night before, so it would have been the 11th, November 11th.
So when you arrived on the 12th, tell us what happened when you first got there.
When I first got to the scene, I met with detectives. There was quite a few people that showed up. There was teams, different teams, and I had crime scene people there as well, and we met up and we briefed on the circumstances.
And at that point, was a process developed by which you would begin processing the scene?
Yes.
And can you describe that for us?
It was determined that the coroner's office basically is taking over this investigation. When there is a crime scene, it is the crime scene unit and the homicide's job to kind of take control of the scene and the evidence within the scene. But the body, the actual decedent, is always the coroner's control. So everything has to be done through the coroner when it comes to the actual decedent. So in this case, it was graves in the middle of the desert. The scene was primarily belonging and under the control of the coroner's office, and we were there to assist.
And what kind of assistance would you provide?
I photographed evidence from the graves and surrounding the graves and collected the evidence.
Did you actually engage in the excavation yourself at any point?
I don't believe so, no.
At some point, did you mentioned doing a walkthrough with detectives. At some point, was that done in this case as well?
Yes.
Can you describe it for us?
When we approach, first at the scene, when we all get to the scene, we're gathered, we're on the road west of the actual graves. We are given a briefing on the circumstances, and then we were led into the scene where the actual graves were and pointed out the items around the grave and the actual graves themselves.
And at some point, did you begin to engage in your process of documenting the scenes?
Yes.
So let me step back for a minute. Is this a typical scene that you're responding to?
For me, no.
Why not?
I generally work crime scenes that are more current, or this is more of a scene. I don't generally respond to too many buried bodies.
Well, you've been doing this for 17 years. How many times have you done that?
Anywhere between 5 and 10 times over my 17 years.
So it's not overly common.
Correct.
And what about, in particular, about the location and nature of this scene did you think was unique or different than stuff that you had encountered in the past?
It was just noted that it was right by the freeway. I could see the freeway from the location, the 15.
What about the terrain? Did the terrain play any aspect into that?
Plain aspect as in,
Whether it was something you'd seen before or was something more unique?
no, I've responded to many crime scenes in the desert. Just the fact that they were more than one grave, more than one decedent, and that they were, the 3 of them were completely buried is what made it more unique for me.
You say the 3 of them were completely buried. Are you aware of evidence in this case there was a 4th victim?
Yes.
Okay. And can you explain why you chose the phrase you did in saying 3 completely buried versus there being 4?
Well, because I knew that that's how, the briefing that I was given was, circumstances was that bones were located outside of the grave, which were most likely from animal activity. So I knew that there was one decedent that had been, the bones were scattered in the area. and I witnessed the other 3 during the excavations.
Gotcha. So walk us through your process as you begin your job.
Well, generally, after the briefing, then I take overall photographs, and overall photographs are how the scene looks when I first got there, before anything's been disturbed. And I understand that people were there the day prior when I wasn't there, but as of when I got there, this is how the scene looked. So I walk around the scene, made everybody stay at the command post. I walked around by myself. I might have had a training with me. I walked around the scene and I took photographs of the scene as it appeared when I got there. After all those photographs were taken, then that's when everybody came in, all the teams came in, and I know that we all did a line search, and everybody was given pin flags because there were bones, scattered bones in the area, in quite a large area around the graves. So during the line search, everybody was given pin flags, and they marked the bones with the pin flags. And then the excavation started.
There's also, outside of that initial photography being done, at some point you also take aerial photographs?
Yes, I did.
And why is that?
Just to kind of show the terrain, to kind of show the location, where the graves are located as opposed to the mountains and the freeways and which road, and just an overall view of the entire scene.
And how do you do that?
In a helicopter.
You own a helicopter?
I do not. I share a helicopter with me.
Okay. I'm going to show you a few exhibits. With some of them we've already seen before with other witnesses and actually have been doodled on. Tell me if you recognize exhibit number 181.
Yes.
And how do you recognize that?
This looks like one of the aerial photographs of the scene.
And the process by which, I'm going to display it without the doodling of the other witnesses. When you're taking photos from the helicopter, is the helicopter standing still?
Sometimes I try to get it as still as possible. Most of the time, I'm kind of orbiting or circulating around the area.
Okay. You're not actually flying it while taking the photos, are you?
I am not.
Okay. So it's kind of up to the whim of the pilot whether you stand still versus you orbit around the scene.
Mostly yes, but sometimes they will try to appease me if I ask them to be in a certain place so I can get a certain shot.
Gotcha. Can you please describe for the jury what we're seeing on 181?
This is a photograph, the top right part of the photograph, that is the I-15 freeway. Towards the middle of the photograph that runs from the right to the left, that is Quarry Road.
And this is facing roughly which direction?
Northeast.
And to give contrast, I'm going to show you exhibit number 182. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And please describe what we're looking at with that.
This appears to be another aerial photograph of the scene.
And is this perspective different?
Yes, it is.
And how is it different?
This just looks like it's from looking towards the west.
That, is that a mountain behind it to the west?
Yes, it is.
And are you familiar with anything that's on top of that mountain?
No, I'm not.
I'm going to show you exhibit 185 we saw earlier with Sergeant Bachman. I don't know if you can see his writing on there.
Yes, I can.
And what is that a photograph of?
This is a photograph. It's just a closer view of the, it is an aerial photograph. It's a closer view of the actual graves.
Okay, so while I have 180, is that 182? 2 on the overhead, and I gave you 185, can you give us the approximate location, just with a pointer, of where the grave sites are in this photograph?
Almost towards just the, right about the smack center of the photograph.
Okay. And does that appear to be some kind of wash or unimproved road or something near where you pointed in the center of the photograph?
Yes, it did.
Okay. The notations that Detective Bachman placed on there of grave A and grave B, is that consistent with your recollection as well?
Yes, it is.
Exhibit number 188. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
This, again, is an aerial photograph. It's more the top-down view of the graves.
They're a little closer in. Zoomed in a little bit more.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned you took kind of overall photographs as you walked through the scene originally. Is that correct?
Correct.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 190. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes. This is a photograph. It's not an aerial photograph. It was a photograph taken, and you can see, I believe that's grave A in this photograph.
Can you point that out for us? The disruption in the earth to the center right, is that correct?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit 193. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do. This is a photograph of grave B.
Would be that a similar overall photograph?
It's a lot closer than the other ones. I'm actually on the ground and just a few feet from the grave at this point when this photograph was taken.
After the line search and the use of pin flags, did you go back and photograph things that would have been marked by the searchers at that time?
I know that everything was not marked by the searchers at that time. I believe a few things may have been photographed, and then I started photographing as they were excavating the graves.
I'm sorry if I implied contemporaneously with that search, but at some point where pin flags were placed, did you take an opportunity to attempt to photograph those items that were flagged?
Of the items of evidence, yes.
And just as an exemplar, I'm going to show you exhibit number 199 and 200. Can you please describe what we're looking at in 199?
199 is what appeared to be a bone that was marked with a pin flag. And 200 is what would appear to be pieces of fabric that were marked with a pin flag.
Once the excavation began of each of the individual grave sites, what role did you take on in the process of documenting stuff that was recovered from those grave sites?
At that time, my role was to photograph when items were found within the grave, and to document what was found. Mostly what I document was dictated directly from Dr. Gray or Bob Hunter, or there was a lady named Becky Brunel that was also dictating some items that were located during the excavations.
Were both graves being excavated simultaneously
Yes, they were.
by two different sets of staff, volunteers, employees, workers?
Yes.
Okay. Did that make your job difficult in any way?
Somewhat, yes, just because I was going back and forth and I wanted to try to make sure that the photographs that I was taking, that I knew where the photographs were coming from and which grave. So I made a point to try to make it so that it was clear to everybody if they were looking at the photographs.
As you were doing that, is it possible that you may have missed an opportunity to photograph a particular bone that came out of an individual grave?
That is possible.
But again, you weren't charged to control how that happened, were you?
I was not.
Okay.
Objection leading and argumentative.
Overrule the answering name.
So I'm going to start with grave A. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 205. I'm going to try and go sequentially in your photos line. Can you tell us what we were seeing, what you were photographing in this photograph?
This looks like the early stages of the visualization of the red strap that was in grave A.
Can you please point that out for us?
It's in the center of the photograph, right in the middle by scale, inside.
Then Exhibit 206. Same question, what are we seeing?
206 appears to be the woven blanket that was located within grave A.
.207.
.207 appears to be when the decedent was becoming more visible within grave A. That was the initial photographs.
At the time, were you also attempting to document items that may have been found near grave A as well, but on the outside?
Yes.
Show you what's been marked as exhibit number 214. You recognize that?
Yes.
Can you please describe for us what it is?
214 is a photograph of, it looks like a torn up towel that had been pin flagged.
Exhibit number 215.
Number 215 appears to be a torn, looks like it could be a piece of the woven blanket that had also been pin flagged.
And last but not least, exhibit number 216. What is that?
216 is the half of the bra that was located outside of the grave.
And do you recall the kind of the location in which this photograph was taken?
The bra was located, I believe it was southeast of grave B.
Was it lying just open dirt, or was it in a bush? What was it?
Not completely under a bush, but maybe towards the side of the bush. It wasn't completely under the bush, but it was kind of up against it a little bit.
We'll come back to that later. Was this collected as a piece of potential evidence?
Yes, it was.
And when you collect a piece of evidence like this, what do you do?
When an item of evidence is collected, like this piece of bra, it's put into a paper bag or an envelope, and then it is marked as in the identification numbers for our case, which would be case numbers, the date, the time it was collected, and my initials, and the item description is put on the package.
I'm going to move on to grave B. I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 217. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, this appears to be a photograph of grave B, right in the beginning of the excavation process.
And I see a tape measure in that photograph.
Yes.
Were measurements taken of an approximate grave size at that point?
I don't know if the measurements were not taken by myself. I don't know if she took the measurements of the size of the grave at this point, but she did take measurements.
When you say she, who is that?
Dr. Gray.
Okay. And specifically of note, was there something already visible in this grave site that would ultimately be documented as you went in to photograph?
Yes, there was a towel, and you could see pieces of a bone in the grave.
Can you point to the general direction where this is located? We'll zoom in on it here shortly.
The towel is located in the center of the photograph.
To the right of the extended tape measure?
Yes,
Okay.
or above.
Above, right? How's that? So exhibit number 218 then?
218 is as she started cleaning away at the dirt in grave B. It was a photograph of the towel.
And exhibit number 219, do you recognize that?
It's a close-up photograph of the bones or the hair that was identified right next to the towel in grave B.
Can you point that out for us, please?
It's in the center of the photograph.
During the excavation of this grave, grave B, did other, say, noticeable things start to be uncovered as the excavation continued?
Yes.
And what was that?
Aside from the bodies, there was clothing, there was towels, there was backpacks, we found the additional decedent in grave B, and a sledgehammer.
Okay, so let's kind of walk through that briefly, as quickly as we can. 222, do you recognize that?
Yes, 222 is the same, the initial skull area of the first decedent located in grave B, the hair, and also you can see the clothing just above the skull in this photograph.
And was ultimately that clothing removed?
Yes, it was.
I'm showing you exhibit 223. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Can you describe it for us, please?
This is the clothing that was collected in grave B. It was just northwest of the initial skull that was located in the grave. And it's a pair of sweats and a pair of panties.
And was that collected as evidence in the same manner described earlier?
Yes, it was.
Showing you exhibit number 226. Do you recognize that?
Yes, 226 is when the backpack in grave B became more visible.
I don't know if it was a misspeak or a slur of the tongue. I thought I heard you say backpacks, plural.
No backpack, sorry,
Okay.
this one.
When you initially testified, there was only one recovered from the grave?
Correct.
Okay. And I left you 227 up there on the stand. Can you please describe it?
227 is the backpack when it was removed from grave B.
And was this collected as a potential piece of evidence as well?
Yes, it was.
I'm going to have you walk us through exhibits 228, 29, and 30 for perspective purposes. If you can take a look at each of those individually.
Okay, exhibit 228 is a photograph of the first body identified in grave B. Exhibit 229 is more of a closer view of the same decedent in grave B. And exhibit 230 is the same as the last one, but this one has a scale in it.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit 231. Do you recognize that?
Actually, I'm not 100% sure.
The digital file number is written on the back of the exhibit. Would it assist in seeing that and looking at your report to determine what that's a photograph of?
Yes, it would.
With the court's permission.
Sure.
This is a photograph of grave B.
Was there another additional piece of clothing item removed from that grave?
Honestly, I can't tell from this photograph and this lighting exactly what this is a photograph.
Okay, so let's pick something better. Was there another article of clothing removed from the grave?
Yes, there was.
Okay, and what was that?
There was a pair of pants with a pull-up next to them. They were toddler
Okay.
pants.
Is there any other female clothing items?
There was a bra,
Okay.
the other half of a bra.
Gotcha. So let me show you 237 and 238.
Okay, 237 and 238 are the half of the bra that was located inside the grave.
So 237 is up. And now 238. Were those also likewise collected as potential evidence in the manner described previously?
Yes, it was.
And similarly to grave A, did you attempt to collect or identify items of potential evidence outside of the grave in the kind of surrounding immediate area?
Yes.
I'm going to show you two exhibits, 239 You recognize that?
239 is pieces of fabric that were marked with a pin flag.
And I left you 240 up there. Can you please tell us what that is?
240 is an electrical cord socket that was located in the area.
Was that similarly collected as potential evidence?
Yes, it was.
To give us some perspective, did you take a moment to use one of the aerial photographs to mark out where some of the evidence was found outside of the graves and around them?
Yes, I did.
So I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 753. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay, and is that the photograph you drew on prior to coming to court?
Yes.
When you collect pieces of evidence, I'm going to put it on the overhead. When you collect pieces of evidence, how do you inventory them and catalog them?
When items of evidence are collected and they're packaged and collected and they are transported back to my lab, once in the lab, all of the items are itemized and they're given item letter A1, A2, A3, and that is so that item letter sticks with that piece of evidence through the time I collect it to goes through a DNA unit, and that's what that item is further referred to as.
And on this exhibit, did you mark the approximate location of grave A and grave B as well?
Yes, I did.
So I see several numbers up there, such as A12, A23, A11, and some circles next to them. Can you walk us through them and tell us what you were denoting at those locations?
Yes. Your Honor, may I refer to my notes
Sure.
on this one?
And I think there's a laser pointer there if you want to use that to point to the various areas.
Okay. Grade A, I put in A next to it just for reference for the photograph, so that you can see where the items of evidence that were collected around were in reference to the actual graves. Item A11, which was a piece of fabric, was right here where it's where I marked it on the sketch, towards the center, below the center, and just a little bit right of center. And that was a piece of fabric. A12 was a white towel, and it's marked, you can see A12 is just left of center on the photograph. A13 was a strap from the ground, and it's right about the center of the photograph, and it's marked A13. A22 was a white towel, which is the lower right side of the photograph. A23 is 2 pieces of torn white towel, which is just above the center, and it's marked A23 on the photograph. A24 is a piece of torn woven blanket, and that is also on the bottom right side of the photograph, and it's marked A24. Item A26 was the right cup of the bra that was located, and it's towards the top left side of the photograph, and it's marked A26.
So I want to turn now to what you did with those items that you collected as evidence.
Before you do that, do you have an estimate of the distance between A24 and A26?
I do not. I have the distance, the measurements from the azimuth circle. I have the distance from the azimuth circle to A24, and I have the distance from the azimuth circle to A26.
Okay, could you give us those two?
So item A24, which was at the bottom right-hand side of the corner, was 25 feet 4 inches from the azimuth circle, which is placed in the approximate center of the photograph. Item A26, which is towards the top left side of the photograph, is 29 feet 1 inch from the azimuth circle up this way,
So about 54 feet between the two of them.
approximately, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So can you tell us that process when you get back to the lab? What do you do with the stuff you collected in the field?
When I get back to the lab, the items are inventoried. The items were not photographed in detail at the scene because I did not want to lose any evidence at the scene. So a lot of the items of evidence were photographed back at the lab. Like the clothing and the bra, those items were laid out on a piece of clean paper and they were photographed. And then they were packaged, they were sealed, everything was itemized, and then everything was submitted to Sheriff's Central Property and Evidence Unit.
Do you recall doing any type of sampling or testing or other types of examinations with any of this evidence at the time in the lab?
Yes, I did.
Okay. If you could alert us as we go item by item, if you did something specific, can you please let us know?
Okay.
I may even ask you to. So I'm going to show you initially exhibit number 245, 246, 247, and 248. Can you please, just starting with 245, tell us what that depicts?
245 is the clump, and I called it a clump because it was, the underwear was entwined in the legs of the pants. It was the clump of clothing, which included the pair of black sweats and the pair of panties. And that's how it was collected and transported back to the lab. It was collected like this from the scene. Exhibit 246 is, I laid it out so that you could see the sweats and the panties separated and the unknown staining on the sweatpants. Exhibit 247 is I flipped the sweatpants over and I just photographed the other side.
Between 246 and 247, do you recall or could you tell which is oriented to front and back?
It appears that 247 would be the back and that 246 is the front. Because I can see the tag in 246.
Okay. And then 248 is?
248 is a photograph of the panties.
Did they appear to be intact? Question mark.
Intact as far as,
As a set of panties.
yes, they seem to be deteriorated. They appear to be deteriorated over time, but they didn't seem shredded or ripped or torn to me.
I'll show you what's been marked as exhibit number 249 and 250. Do you recognize those?
Yes, 249 is a photograph of the half of the bra that was located inside the grave.
Okay.
And exhibit 250 is the same.
So I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 746 and 746A. Do you recognize that?
Yes, 746 is the bra that was, it was identified as item A3. That's the item letter that I gave the bra. And this is the bra from inside the grave.
Okay. Mr. Jackson, if we can have you over him very briefly. See if this does this without too much glare. That's way better. Did there appear to be some type of substance on this half of the bra?
Yes, I did.
And can you show it to us and describe what you observed?
When looking at the photograph on the left side of the bra, there appeared to be, I call it a white substance. To me, it was consistent with paint, but I don't know for sure, excuse me, exactly what it was.
It had a distinct pattern to it, correct?
Yes, sort of like a drip. It was dripping.
Can you orient what you're seeing to us on how it would be if worn? Is that possible?
If this bra, this would be the left cut, so it would be the dripping, the drip, the flow stains right here, where it could, the substance appeared to have flown or flowed towards the center. If it was being worn at the time, it would have been towards the center of the bra.
Mr. Jackson, if we go back to the projector and let's look at 240, I think it's 248 is being projected. In 248, you can see some of the strapping.
Yes, and there appeared to be a cut right down the center of the bra.
That appears to be, is it smooth or is it frayed?
It was frayed, but it appeared to me to be a straight cut, but it looked frayed.
And is this orientation approximately correct if worn, the way you described it?
Yes, it appears to be yes.
Okay.
Just for clarification, I think that's 249. Or actually, it's 250, not 248.
Sorry, 250, is that correct?
Yes.
Sorry. The, so when a piece of evidence comes in like this that would have some type of substance on it, what steps are taken in general terms to further test it?
On an item like this, it is clothing. I don't normally do testing on it because this item was going to have to be sent to our DNA unit. And I did not want to do testing on it and send it to somebody else to do testing on it. So I packaged it up and I sent it to DNA and let the DNA analyst collect that item and do whatever DNA testing he was going to do on it.
Okay. And would the same then be done also for whatever substance that is on the cup?
Yes.
Assuming it wasn't biological.
Yes, he would have scraped it and repackaged it during his processing.
But your photograph would have been taken before any of that process?
Yes.
Okay. So if there is a discrepancy between, that can be seen between item 746, the actual physical bra cup, and what you photographed in 249 and 250, would that be explained by further testing steps that would have been taken down the line?
Yes.
Such as potentially sampling the white substance on the bra?
Yes.
Objection calls for speculation.
All over the answer.
Exhibit number 252. Do you recognize that photograph?
252 appears to be a torn towel.
that have been the torn towel collected from the grave along with the backpack, the panties, the sweats?
I'd have to refer to the photograph number to see exactly which one this is.
If that would assist, please do.
Yes. Yes, this is a photograph of the towel that was identified as item A4, which was in fact collected from the center of grave B.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 258. Can you describe what item of evidence you were documenting in that photograph?
This is a photograph of a key.
From?
I was asked to photograph evidence that was collected during the autopsy of Mr. McStay, and this key was from the pants pocket.
Objection to the foundation, just unless she was present.
You didn't see the key being taken from the pocket? You were just,
Yes, I took the key from the pocket.
okay, the objection's overruled.
Which pocket?
It was the pocket of the pants that were collected during the autopsy.
Which pocket?
The right pocket, sorry.
Front, rear? I don't know if there was a rear pocket, but
I don't recall, I just in my notes wrote right pocket.
I'm going to show you a series of photographs starting with exhibit number 259. Can you walk us through those, please?
This 259 appears to be photographs of the woven blanket. I can refer to the photograph number and tell you exactly where. Okay, this is photographs of the woven blanket that had remnants of a pull-up in it from grave A.
Okay. 260?
This would be the same, it's another photograph of the same woven blanket.
Okay. 261?
261 is also a photograph of this same woven blanket.
And 262?
262 is also a photograph of the woven blanket.
And what is in the upper right-hand corner?
In the upper right-hand corner are remnants of a pull-up, I guess I can describe it as a toddler diaper.
You mentioned one in being found in grave, I'm going to get it backwards, the one with the two sets of remains.
Grave B, yes.
Grave B, thank you. Is this from grave B or from grave A?
This is from grave A.
Grave A, thank you. You mentioned a backpack being taken from grave B. I'm going to show you exhibit number 266. Just stack them up. sorry, you just alerted me, I gave you 263. What is 263? As I walked away with it, didn't I?
Yes.
There it is, that's on it on the screen. Do you recognize that?
I have to look at the photograph.
Sorry.
number. It's also pieces that were, I think they were kind of entwined with the woven blanket from grade A.
Back to where I was, I'm sorry for the distraction. Exhibit number 266, 67, and 68. Do you recognize those?
Yes, these are exhibits 266 and 267 are of the black backpack identified as item A7 that were collected from grave B. And exhibit 268 was a spoon, a little child's pickaxe, and a paintbrush that were located inside of the backpack that was item A7. These items were sub-itemized as items A7A through A7C.
Show you what's been marked as exhibit number 278. Do you recognize that?
Exhibit 278 is item A12, which is a white towel from the ground north of grave B.
$279.
Exhibit 279 is a piece of towel from the north side of grave B that was identified as item A17.
You recognize that?
Yes, 283 is it was a clump of fabric. At the time, I couldn't tell if it was a stuffed animal because it appeared to almost kind of be a stuffed animal, but it really wasn't. It was kind of fabric as well. And that was, so I identified it as a clump of fabric from the north side of grave B, and it's identified as item A18.
Fair to say that a lot of the items that were collected here were dirty, so to speak?
Yes,
Okay. Some things had a lot of dirt covering them?
yes.
Okay. So did you attempt to dissect this clump of material?
No, I did not, because I knew that if there was going to be testing done on it, that it was going to be sent to another unit for that.
Were there some pieces, though, that you were able to isolate from the main clump and photograph?
Yes, that's what led me to believe that it could have been sort of a stuffed animal, a kid's.
280. I'm sorry. 284.
284 is also part of this clump of fabric, and it looked like an embroidered eyeball or nose or something.
285,
285 is also a piece of this clump of fabric identified as item A18.
is that the reverse of the previous one, or is that a different clump?
It's part of this clump, it's just a different piece, it's not the embroidered piece.
Okay.
It's just part of this clump of fabric.
And lastly, 286.
286 is, I believe, the other side of 285, just a different angle from the clump of fabric identified as item A18. Yes, these are both pictures of a white towel from the ground northeast of grave A, identified as item A22.
Oh. In the next exhibit, was which number? I gave it to you,
You gave me 293 and 294.
and 294 is,
That is a photograph of the tag on the same towel.
.297 and 298. Start with 297. You recognize that?
Both 297 and 298 are two pieces of torn white towel from the ground northwest of grave B and are identified as item A23. And that's for both exhibits 297 and 298.
Are they the same pieces between the two exhibits, or are they two separate pieces?
They're the same piece, they're flipped over.
Showing you it's been marked as exhibit number 311. You recognize that?
Yes, these are exhibit 311, are a photograph of the keys that were removed from the clothing collected at the autopsy.
Of whom or which grave, or
Mr. McStay.
did you make note of these items of exactly where they came from?
Yes, I did.
Where was that? Other than just the general, came from the clothing of.
I'm gonna have to refer to my notes and find out exactly where. This is a photograph of the keys from the left back pocket of the shorts that were collected during the autopsy of Mr. McStay. And they were identified as item E7, the shorts were.
Exhibit number 316.
Exhibit number 316 is a photograph of the key that was collected from the right pocket of these shorts that were collected during the autopsy of Mr. Stay, and the shorts were identified as item E7.
Show you exhibit numbers 328 and 329.
Okay, exhibits number 328 and 329 are both photographs of the red strap from the ground northwest of grave B, and they are identified as item A13.
Which one is the lighter colored one? Which exhibit number?
The lighter colored one is 329.
328 is darker, color red.
That's correct.
332 and 333.
Both exhibits 332 and 333 are photographs of a piece of towel from the north side of grave B, and is identified as item A17.
332 looks like a clump to me.
Yes, 332 is the clump. That's when it was collected and it was transported back to the lab in this condition. And once to photograph it, it was laid out. And that's the photograph that exhibit 333 is.
Show you what's been marked as 335 and 336.
Both exhibits 335 and 336 are photographs of a piece of torn woven blanket from the ground west of grave A and are identified as item A24.
Front and back.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. What was the first number?
335 and 336.
$341.
Exhibit 341 is a photograph of the red strap from inside grave A and is identified as item A25.
$347, 48, and 49. You recognize those?
Yes, these are photographs of the sledgehammer. It was collected from grave B and is identified as item A19. All three photographs are exhibits 347, 348, and 349. They're all just different angles.
The middle one that's the close-up of the handle, 348.
Yes.
What were you attempting to document there?
There's some paint located on the handle of the sledgehammer.
In exhibit number 745. You recognize that?
Yes, this appears to be the sledgehammer.
And was this sent for further testing down the line?
I believe it was.
And if that distinct impression of white that you see on the handle may not be visible now, could that be explained by that further testing?
Yes, it could.
Objection, speculation.
Overall, that's fine.
This photo would have been taken prior to any of that testing.
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as 747 and 747A. You recognize this?
Yes, this is the half of the bra that was collected outside of the grave from the ground southeast of grave B and identified as item A26.
Now, if I recall from the photograph, in the photograph it appeared brown. Did it not?
Yes.
Here we go with magic lights again. Best I can do with the glare. Maybe. This appears to be black.
Correct.
Okay? Yeah, that is so. Was there an explanation for this based on your observations?
I had documented in my notes that this bra was located in the dirt outside of the grave, that it was dirty and it was partially sun bleached.
At any time in your evidence processing, did you process any footwear?
No, I did not.
The staining on the sweatpants, have you seen in your experience anything similar to that in the past?
To me, it was consistent with bleach.
Objection, foundation, and speculation.
Overall, actually,
Why would you say that?
It appeared to me that it was bleach. The black fabric had that yellowish tint from bleach. I've seen it before. I've accidentally bleached my own clothing. So from what I've seen, that's what appeared to me.
Have you, over the years, investigated remains that have been in various stages of decomposition,
Yes,
including those that have been clothed in dark clothing?
yes,
Have you, in your 17 years,
yes.
have you ever seen that type of staining that would have been associated with decomposition?
No.
Another objection, foundation.
overall,
Your Honor, at this time, due to the glare caused by the overhead, permission to publish 746 and 47A by passing them through the jury, they are in sealed K-Pack containers.
sure, that's fine, we'll do that, and then we'll go ahead and take our afternoon recess after that, so we can turn up the lights.
I'm sorry, and 745.
Okay. right, we'll go ahead and take our afternoon recess, this time about 15 minutes. Again, keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case or allow anyone to discuss the case with you or in your presence. We'll see everyone back.